Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, we have got to talk about this crazy censorship problem that we are dealing with. Now, the last, I want to say, several days, weeks, it almost feels like there's a concerted effort with every single large entity trying to censor everything they can on the internet. We've seen Steam to take away a bunch of Gooner games, which granted, we're on the fringe end of people caring. But then you start to see itch.io delisting a bunch of games, even one of the most popular games, mouthwashing, because it dared to be a little bit more mature of a video game. And speaking of other horror games, games like Vile Exhumed, a horror title that focuses on parasocial relationships and some very, very wild real things people have to deal with, simply because it's mature, ends up getting removed entirely off of Steam. So that's wild. And in other things, Xbox has also thrown in age verification to social services. So yeah, it seems as if using a verifying yourself through facial recognition or showing identification is mostly going to be a thing in parts of the world now. But of course, we've also seen in the last couple days, the United Kingdom has passed the Online Safety Act. And, I think it doesn't end there, ladies and gentlemen. I really do think that the next stage in this is VPNs, okay? Trying to take down the little amount of freedom that human beings get to have in the world. So I want to kind of keep this pretty much as brief and sort of focused as I can. So a couple of years ago, the actual organization Ofcom, for instance, which would be, overseeing the regulations of this current Online Safety Act, in 2022, the government over here urged that the government would consider a crackdown on VPNs. Okay, so this is before this law had actually passed. Now, why would they talk about VPNs? For anybody that doesn't know what a VPN is kind of like an encrypted tunnel that you can basically use to obfuscate where you are on the internet, right? So for instance, being in Canada, I can use a VPN and connect myself to the United States. And in theory, for most of the websites that I'm visiting, they'll probably think that I'm from a United States IP. Now, it's not entirely as clear-cut and simple, but we'll get into it. So according to, the people researching this, they're commonly used to bypass regional locks on content, obviously. And of course, one of the actual MPs in this situation said there are vital problems in the bill. And the real threat is the use of virtual private networks. VPNs could undermine the effectiveness of these measures. So basically, they wanted to kind of have another sort of clause. So one clause that was brought in would require the Secretary of State to publish, within 6 months of this bill's passage, a report on the effect of VPN use on Ofcom's abilities to enforce the requirements. Now, I can already tell you, you don't have to go fast forward 6 months from now. I'll tell you. The absolute case where VPNs are affecting this is probably guaranteed. For instance, ProtonVPN, one of the free VPN options people have to sort of bypass a lot of these shitty UK laws that have passed, this saw a surge of like 1,000%. Okay, so overnight, people in the United Kingdom were suddenly Googling, how the fuck do I get this VPN thing and how do I use it to get past a lot of these blocks? So if you go to ProtonVPN, their free option is obviously 100% free. You can secure one of your devices, you get medium VPN speeds. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll start to notice that the option people really want to get onto is probably the $5.49 month option. And that's because you can actually do things like streaming videos, which I imagine people want to stream certain videos that they can't because, the government says no. And of course, unless of course you provide your identification, which hopefully that doesn't get hacked down the road. I mean, everyone can hope. And then, of course, if you want to do things like BitTorrent, basically they've blocked everything from the free option that people would absolutely probably want to use. So you probably want to get the paid situation. Now, the reason why the VPNs are going to be targeted is because this is probably the easiest way for any of you guys to bypass any of these online safety acts. So again, the people of the United Kingdom made a petition, which again has gotten 362,000 signatures, called Repeal the Online Safety Act. So the law goes into effect, and by the way, this law has been cooked up for a while. It goes into effect, people are like, oh my god, this actually is more censorious than I thought. You know, this is getting rid of basically all forms of free and open internets, right? You know, you can't look at things like protest footage, you can't share, things on the internet because they might be harmful or damaging to children, right? You'll have to provide government ID to actually view a lot of things in the world that should not be censored. If you live in a free society, you should be able to basically see whatever you want without the government basically putting in as much friction as they can between you and the truth. So of course, the government responded to all of these signatures, which they're not a small amount of signatures, by the way. Even campaigns like Stop Killing Games have not blown up as fast as something like Online Safety Act and the repealing of it. So the government says, by the way, the government has no plans, no plans to repeal the Online Safety Act. And they're actually working closely with Ofcom to implement this shit as quickly and effectively as possible to enable the UK users to benefit from its protections. Now, you might be like, well, Muda, why are you so into this? You're not from the United Kingdom. You're good, homie. And that's true, but to give you an idea, one law that I've seen people talk about, which I discussed about a year ago, was the Kids Online Safety Act. And to give you an idea, if you think that laws like this that are already successful in one part of the world aren't just going to start passing all over the world, you would be shocked, okay? Simple as that. So anyways, the United States has a version called the Kids Online Safety and Privacy Act, or COSPA, or I guess commonly known as COSA, which basically, if you really read the fine print of the laws, and again, organizations like the EFF have kind of really talked about it, is that it will actually cause systems to over-censor their actual thing. It'll cause systems to almost, get rid of things that, marginalized communities ultimately do need, okay? If you think that censorship works in just one direction, you are severely mistaken. As long as you give people the power to censor one thing, everyone will start using this weapon to get rid of as much speech that they don't agree with off the internet, okay? That's as simple as it is, okay? Censorship is bad. And it's bad because if you fight to have something censored, those same people can fight to have whatever you appreciate censored as well. Simple as that. Now, according to some individuals who've been dealing with this shitty Online Safety Act, apparently some platforms have been so easy that users have been taking photos from Death Stranding 2 and using the high-quality facial, graphics on this game, and AIs have been apparently falling for it. Now, I haven't verified this for myself. I have tried to make a new PlayStation account and use AI images to bypass it, but a lot of these systems are actually starting to beat that. But never forget that ingenuity of people will always supersede whatever government restriction gets thrown in. Now, even when the government of the United Kingdom is kind of called out on this on national television, this is kind of the interesting thing yet to hear.
Mr. President, you have a successful social media site. There are new powers here to censor your site, state-mandated powers.
To censor my site?
To censor your site and Twitter
Truth?
and Facebook.
Truth,
I mean Truth. Is that okay?
Well, I don't think he's going to censor my site because I say only good things. Will you please uncensor my site?
Yeah, we're not censoring anyone. We've got some measures which are there to protect children, in particular from sites like suicide sites. We've had too many cases in the United Kingdom of young children taking their own lives, and when you look through their social media, they've been accessing sites which talk about suicide and encouraging, if you like, children down that road.
So immediately they bring up this, let's protect the kid stuff. So again, I hear something new. We got to protect these kids from accessing these really spooky, suicide websites, right? And again, if you go to any social media service and you just type in the words like suicide, for instance, every social media platform or any search engine will automatically throw you a bunch of lifelines. In fact, just by me mentioning that word, I'm sure you're going to see a little community note on this video just underneath the title and description that says, hey, if you're, in trouble, please seek some attention. And that's just because the system kicks in, because it's such a serious topic that absolutely, any search engine system is going to try to find a way for anybody feeling that way to get their help. So again, it's not the government that needs to jump in and provide assistance. A lot of these social media services, a lot of these search engines already provide that stuff just because it actually is, in this case, the overwhelmingly moral thing to have done. But let's say that, yes, he is right. Kids are accessing crazy forums in other parts of the world, right? Crazy forums that probably aren't hosted in areas that the United Kingdom has any jurisdiction in. You know, I don't know how effective their control of the internet is going to be, because the internet is, for the most part, a decentralized platform. And that's one of the reasons why their hunting of VPNs is going to be a waste of time. Now, I want to just walk you through the technology for a VPN real quickly as well. There are some people that have said they can't ban VPNs, Muda. They can't even try to. Remember, don't ever expect any government to not pass a law that is ultimately stupid. Do you actually think, like, anybody with... Do you think they put any thought into these laws before they pass them? I would wager probably not. But the thing is, yes, it is true, right? VPNs are kind of a necessary thing. For instance, if you work in governments, I'm pretty sure I think his name is Keir Starmer, he probably absolutely needs to use a VPN to access some pretty, government networks, right? Some pretty, secure government networks, if you will. If you work at a big company, if you work anywhere, really, you'll probably need a VPN to access an internal network. And it's not super duper complicated. For instance, this is WireGuard, and you can create right now a fast VPN tunnel into your own house. Something that I actually do when I need to connect into my home network from outside the house. So for instance, if I want to access things like the Raspberry Pi that runs a whole bunch of search engines and tools for my entire home network, once I VPN into my actual home, once I VPN to the WireGuard system that I have hosted, I can immediately just SSH into any network, any device on my actual home network. So right here, I've connected to that Raspberry Pi. And from here, I can modify things that affect my entire network, right? So for instance, I have a SeerXNG like host, where basically, my search engine is not Google. I use SeerXNG, and I have it in a way at my home network so that anybody who types in like SeerXNG into my like home network will automatically like go to my local instance. But we're getting really technical here. So the idea, again, you have to understand is VPNs are something that everyone uses, right? VPNs are something that, you can't just ban. But there's nothing that stops like the government here from saying, okay, as long as you're in the government, or as long as your VPN is part of a corporate entity or like a business or a hospital or something, that's an exception. But any company, anybody that's providing a consumer-grade VPN, that's a no-no, because obviously those are going to be used for circumventing the laws. Now, the other thing is people who are purchasing VPNs that are under the Five Eyes Alliance, meaning that, even if your VPN isn't hosted, say, in the United Kingdom, as long as it's hosted in the United States or even Canada, and I think Australia to an extent too, these organizations will just rapidly share information between each other. So you're never really private as long as you truly research what kind of VPN you get into. Now, the other thing is VPNs are not the only thing that can be used to detect you, right? Like I said in the last video, when it comes to a lot of organizations tracking you, just because you have a VPN doesn't mean that they're not looking at something else. So let's say that you're using something like Google Chrome or a pretty insecure browser, something that doesn't, conceal a lot of your browser fingerprints, you could potentially have your information or your location presented in another way that isn't just your IP address. So for example, let's say that I VPN myself to Los Angeles, right? A server in Los Angeles. Now, if I connect to a website and it checks my browser fingerprint and my browser fingerprint leaks out my time zone is actually in Toronto, then immediately it will say, okay, this makes no sense. How is a guy whose browser fingerprint matches that of a Torontonian suddenly connecting to us from Los Angeles? Probably is just a VPN. It's also the reason why when you connect to, Netflix or something and you have like a VPN that is detected by Netflix, they will oftentimes identify it and remove you from access or prevent you from watching the video. And it's because it's a whack-a-mole game between some of the biggest VPN companies and a lot of these big tech companies in order to identify who's an actual user and who's a user that's connecting through a VPN data center. Now, if you want to bypass any form of that kind of browser fingerprinting, there are options like you can download Mullvad browser, which I think is probably the best privacy-focused browser for the Firefox side, And if you're on Chrome, I think one of the best options you can get is something like Google, or not Google, but Brave browser. But even then, right, like if these guys want to track you, they ultimately can find a way. And I think slowly but surely, if it's not just the VPN ban coming in, it's even further checks in order to prevent people from accessing parts of the internet, unless, of course, you give up your personal information and browse the internet, hopefully uncensored. Now, of course, the thing is, they probably don't have a law right now in the drafts for VPN blocking, but the thing is, when they do this test, when they do this like research and see just how many people are bypassing it, don't doubt the fact that these people will try to make VPNs illegal or try to make at least the public facing consumption of it somewhat of a problem. And that's where I guess the last part of this video comes into. The real last bastion of true internet freedom that you have is Tor. So this is the Tor browser, and of course I've connected onto the Tor network. Now, obviously people can say that the Tor network is used by, people committing illegal actions, which is true. There's a lot of illegal stuff that happens on Tor. In fact, a couple days ago, I believe the U.S. Department of Justice actually took down, again, more illegal pedo websites on the dark web. And the thing is, obviously, for a platform that provides a real unprecedented level of anonymity, there's obviously people that use it for illegal reasons. But there are also legal reasons that people use something like Tor for. For instance, let's say you're a journalist, let's say you're somebody operating in a place where, real censorship is a thing, and, criticizing the government or sharing information could potentially get you killed or imprisoned. Using something like Tor to conceal yourself is probably the option that people have. And that's ultimately the thing I want to talk about here, ladies and gentlemen. They want to get rid of VPNs. They want to ban the last bit of freedom people have. And if you think it stops in the UK, the US is passing laws, Canada might just pass laws. If it works in one place, don't expect it not to work somewhere else. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.